My name is Marcia Brissett Bailey. I will be participating in the e-journal just to talk a little bit about my lived experience. You may mind my conversation. My dyslexia affects my language, so sometimes I don't always get the words out right. So that's my disclaimer.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and what is dyslexia in one word or a sentence means to you?
It means creativity. It means thinking outside the box.
My experience of dyslexia is interwoven with my culture, environment, class, and education. All these things can impact on my success in navigating life. So what I mean by that, I was told by my tutor and my parents were there with me that I would never academically achieve. Now I know there's an element of intersectionality at play here. So my environment, as I've mentioned, my culture, possibly the colour of my skin, but definitely something that has an impact on me. So it's not probably, actually I should rephrase that, has had an impact. It's something that is hard to think about and sometimes hard and makes me feel sad. My grandmother always told me I had to work twice as hard. Now I realise what that was about. It was about the colour of my skin, that when I go into the workplace, people not necessarily always going to accept me. You would think she came here from the Caribbean in the 50s, late 50s, early 60s. And she was already thinking about that for me, who was a 5-year-old child. So not only was I a woman, not only was I black, when I was diagnosed with dyslexia, as happy as I was because for the first time I felt I wasn't stupid, I would have that as the other element of those layers that I had to fight through and navigate my way through because it all appeared to be negative. Now, what I came out of my GCSEs with one grade A to C, which was a B in drama, didn't feel that I really had a place, really couldn't find my voice, felt shy. You see, I was of an age when I was growing up, children were seen and not heard. So those cultural elements were still very part of who I was. It was all about being respectful, having good manners, doing what you're told, listening to authority. But authority wasn't always correct because they ruled me out. I loved school, but school didn't seem to love me. School is meant to be a place where you're nurtured. You can have the adventures to play, which is so important. Use your imagination, be creative, explore, be who you want to be. You know, your imagination should be broad as a child. But there I was being tested to see if my intelligence was high through the exams. But I can't be tested on my memory if that's not my strength. But if you test me on my talking and my poetry, then we'll have a different discussion. But that was never seen. So much so, I selectively muted when I was a child and I had to go to psychotherapy.
I can't represent every dyslexic person, and as a black young woman, I was calling myself a young woman, yes, that our lived experience is really varied.
My school reports indicated it, but nobody could see or look beyond. So was it that I was just a statistic as a young black child, wasn't going to achieve much, and I had to fight through? I was not going to sink, so I learnt to float before I started to dive, and I just never gave up. I actually thought I was the only black person who had dyslexia because everybody I saw who was dyslexic was white. And I had to fight through. I was not going to sink, so I learnt to float before I started to dive, and I just never gave up. I think it's really hard for many people from diverse communities to really understand what dyslexia is. My parents didn't understand what dyslexia was, and I had to understand it for myself. I had to really get to use a support network, create one, ask for help. So when Black Lives Matter happened during lockdown and the sad news of George Floyd passing, what that did do, it opened up that discussion from a neurodiverse dyslexia point of view in terms of talking about race and talking about inequalities. And that was the time that I really found my voice to really express more and more about that. Before that, I used to talk about race, and it was almost like no one saw the connection. I was living it, but I would say it's always been from a Eurocentric view. So the Black Lives Matter really put the neurodiversity stamp. We could start to talk about inclusion, diversity. We could start to talk about inequalities. We could start to talk about equity. We could start to talk about belonging. And I want to see more of the diverse in the word diverse within neurodiversity. But I like to say that I've made some change in changing narrative, and I want to continue to change the narrative to talk about lived experience from Black and brown people alongside just being dyslexic and being neurodiverse and what that means. Thank you.